Hello everyone, and welcome to Cook With Me Live. Tonight we're actually going to be doing two different recipes. So while everyone's logging in and getting online and letting me know how the sound is and all the qualities of that, give me a little hello, send me a wave. Maybe let me know who you're in the kitchen with or where you're cooking from tonight, because I do love to know these types of things. And for those of you that are watching this on recording, as per usual on all of these recordings, I would absolutely love to have your engagement still. So even if you didn't make the live one, I still want to be able to connect with you. It might be a little bit selfish so that I feel like I'm actually cooking in the kitchen with you. I want to know how it's going. I want to know if there's anything that maybe we could do to make it better and improve for your experience, and also what your results are. So please tell me if there was a major stuff up. Let me know, because that's how I can help you hopefully prevent it next time or help the others. And also, there's normally lots to learn from a major stuff up. Generally speaking, never throw anything away, by the way, as well. So if that happens, message me and hopefully someone can get back to you straight away. There's normally something we can do to salvage or change the shape or form of it. So please don't go throwing away any precious ingredients. There's normally something we can do to salvage it. All right, but hopefully that hasn't been happening to any of you. And tonight, like I said, we're going to be doing two different recipes. So the reason I'm going to put them together is because they're both fairly simple, but definitely don't underestimate the power in the fact that there's two different recipes that will apply to multiple different uses, particularly the croutons. So tonight we're going to be making the seed bread croutons, which are a similar kind of thing to my seedy Sicilian pizza base, but these are going to be lighter, fluffier, crispier, and not have as strong of a hold as a pizza base. So they're much more crumbly like a crouton could be, crunchier. And on that note, the croutons, I mean, you can be putting them on any type of salad you like. I've even noticed that now that they're just in a jar in the pantry, they happen to just be disappearing gradually every day. So clearly they're a good snack food as well. And I would love it if your children could be snacking on that instead of shapes. So please definitely try them for other uses. And the nice thing is that because they're fully dried, they can last in your pantry for weeks, if not a bit longer. We just need to make sure that they're fully dried, and I'll talk more about that as we get into it. So tonight we're going to be starting off with the seed croutons, and then we're going to be making the bruschetta salad. Now the one thing is, when you're making the croutons tonight, they probably may not be ready in time for dinner tonight. So tonight you might just be trying the bruschetta salad on its own. If you're making this not in the moment when you need to eat it, then ideally you can wait until those croutons are fully baked and dry, and then you can have the salad all together as per design. All right, so the seed croutons, let's get into that. If you haven't already got out your food processor and your dry goods, dry ingredients for that one, let's get those out now. We're going to be needing a 1/4 cup measure, a 1/2 cup measure, and some teaspoons. And that's about it. A little bit of water, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, and we've got croutons. Let's start by preheating the oven. So if you haven't already done that, come on over. Let's get everyone set up for some croutons. Okay, and we'll preheat the oven about 180. It's not super picky. The nice thing about this recipe is that you can even do it in a dehydrator. And it's, dare I say, a little bit easier to finish them in a dehydrator, because then you can set it, forget it, and walk away. Yeah, I'll explain that further when we get into the baking mode. So let's get this happening. Now, if you don't have a food processor, in this case, this recipe, it's actually okay. The only thing is, if you're going to be using nuts that are currently whole, we're going to have to crush them up into a meal. But some of you may be buying almond meal already, so you could use that. And something like the sunflower seeds, unless you wanted to be biting into pieces of this in the croutons, we also need to turn that into a meal. So that's why the food processor is a pretty handy tool here. Those of you that just have a little blitz blender, like a NutriBullet or a bullet style blender, then that can work to just blitz up your little bits of nuts and seeds into a meal, and then we can stir the rest in a bowl. So you have options. All right, and pretty much this one is as simple as getting everything into the container. In this case, I'm going to use the food processor bowl, and we are going to blend it all up till it's like a meal consistency, add the liquids, and spread it out as fast as we can, because it actually makes it easier. Okay, so we're going to need about 1 cup of sunflower seeds. So let's go one of those. It's about 1 cup. The other thing I'll say is, if you find out when you make this recipe that you actually really enjoy it, and maybe it's disappearing a bit too quickly in your pantry, It's really easy to double, and the double recipe will even still fit in your food processor. So you can just immediately double that recipe. And if you want to take that one step further, which I would highly recommend, once you're getting your efficiency skills down pat and as you start to learn these things, is make yourself a premix of the dry ingredients if you love having croutons on hand. So in that case, you might quadruple the recipe, just the dry ingredients though, and then keep the dry ingredients ready to go in a jar in your pantry. So all you have to do is pull out the measured amount, add your liquids, and there you can make a batch of croutons in no time. Okay, so that's one more step down the track maybe for some of you, but let's start here. So I'm doing a single batch. We need about half a cup of your chosen types of nuts. These are activated almonds I'm going to use. You could use cashews, Brazil nuts, walnuts, pecans, whatever you choose. Okay, so some nut meal. And if you don't want to use nuts, you can definitely substitute it for more seeds as well. All right, next up is our coconut flour. So half a cup of coconut flour. And this one is being used particularly because it's a very drying ingredient. So this is going to absorb a lot of that moisture and kind of not hold on to it as long as, say, for example, a buckwheat flour would, which is what we want. So about half a cup of coconut flour. And then we're on to our sesame seeds. So we only need about 1/4 cup of these. And please try not to leave these guys out. Even if you don't necessarily love the flavor of sesame, there's not that many in here. It's not going to be a predominant flavor. And the amount of amazing calcium and other beneficial nutrients that we get from sesame seeds is truly incredible. I would call them a superfood in many ways. Next up is our chia seeds. So we'll go 1/4 cup of those as well. Also another major superfood. I haven't actually checked my facts on this, but apparently chia was so valuable before the days of currency, we're talking thousands of years ago in South America, that they actually used it as a currency when they traded, because it was lightweight, highly nutritious, and easy to carry in their pocket when they did like the major treks across the mountains. So then we're going to need nutritional yeast. Now, I just realized I haven't got my nutritional yeast out, so I'm going to go get a hold of that, the bulk version of that. And nutritional yeast in this case, I'd say it's kind of a necessary ingredient, only because it provides the kind of cheesy-like taste to it, so you don't have to include it by any means. As a matter of fact, I could even leave mine out tonight because I already have a batch made. So maybe I'll do that. I'm going to try that, test that, see what it tastes like without. But I would recommend not leaving it out, only because you're going to get that extra sort of, some people have said it's almost Parmesan-like. So it's quite a nice flavor to a crouton. Okay, so normally you'd be putting in 1/4 cup of that. I'm going to try it without. And we're going to then put in a good tablespoon of your Italian herb mix. If you haven't already got one of these made up, that is okay. Basically, there's many different kinds of Italian spice mixes. This one is quite pepper heavy, actually. I'm not super happy with this one. But it's mostly going to be a combination of oregano, probably some marjoram, maybe some parsley, definitely some basil, and then generally garlic and pepper. So we're going to put a good tablespoon of it in there. I know it's going to feel like maybe a lot, but we're going to make quite a few croutons with this. And then we're going to need some garlic powder on top of that. So even if it has it in the mix, I still want to add a little bit because it's quite nice, I find, to have a garlicky crouton. Now I've called for about 2 teaspoons, so just shy. So a tablespoon is 3. I'm going to use, that's the equivalent of 2 teaspoons, approximately. And then we're going to put 2 teaspoons of baking powder in. Now, this is one of the major differences between this recipe and the CD Sicilian, is because this baking powder is going to give us a little bit more of that nice flaky, crumbly texture that we want from a crouton, as opposed to like a pizza crust that wants to hold itself. So we're going to use 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Okay. And then some salt. Now this one might feel like a lot. We're going to do it 1.5 teaspoons. Okay. So if you're measuring correctly, try not to do this one with just estimating on a spoon. Okay. Because salt is one of those ones that can ruin or make a dish. So I am going to go the 1 plus the half of the teaspoons. And again, croutons are not something where you're going to sit and kind of eat the whole thing like a sandwich. So in this case, generally speaking, when you bite into one crouton, you want it to be slightly more salty than if you were biting into a thing of bread, for example. So we definitely want to include that. And then the last two ingredients are our wet ingredients. So at this point, let's give that a big blitz up. If you are using a machine like this, you probably want to crank it to maybe 8 or 9 for a couple of seconds. And any other machine you're using, like another regular food processor, you could just crank it for a couple of seconds until you get a nice meal texture. Did you hear how the sound changed on that one? You might not have because I covered it up there, but what we're hearing is the change from big pieces down to really fine meal. And that's the texture that we're looking for. So kind of as fine as you can get it without starting to extract the oils from the nuts and the seeds, which will then really glug this, and it'll almost be like it's starting to turn them into nut butter or seed butter. So definitely want to take it about that far, but not too much further, such that you start getting the oil extracted from the seeds and nuts. All right, and then next up is the liquids. So into this same mixture, we can just let the machine do the work for us. But I just want to maybe set you guys up properly here. Before we put the liquids in, make sure that you have your container ready to go, because as soon as we put the liquids in, the liquids are going to be grabbed basically by the seeds. And especially because the seeds have been ground down, it's going to happen quite quickly. Which means it's not that big of a deal. It just means the faster you work once you add the liquid, the easier your job is going to be. It's almost like pouring it out and just spreading the corners. So really do make sure that you get yourself your baking dish ready. It doesn't have to be this big. This type of dish won't fit a lot of ovens, but the equivalent of this much. So it might be two baking trays you need for the equivalent of this, okay? So we'll get that out. And I am going to use the paper. I find it gives me a bit more control, a little bit less mess. It's not just any baking paper though, it's a good quality silicone-based one. And so I'm ready to go. So how's everyone else going? I haven't even said any hellos yet. Hello Paige and Andrea, thanks for being on. Hello Narelle and Jessica, good to see you guys. Cool. Okay, so we need 2 cups of water straight in. And you know what, I'm going to even take this one step further and add my apple cider vinegar to the water. So about a tablespoon, a bit less. And here we go. So just going to get that running. Okay, and then the rest I'm going to do by hand with a spatula, just to speed it along. So as you can see, it hasn't quite mixed that for me yet, so I'm just going to quickly get in there and combine it until it's even. And we're going to then pour it straight out onto the baking paper. There we go. Okay. Straight onto there. Trying to get every last little bit out of the bottom. And then spreading it fairly thin. Now, if you like a fatter crouton, you could definitely put this onto a smaller surface area. The only caution is that it's going to take longer to bake the moisture out, which means you probably would benefit from having a dehydrator for that last step. So we're going to start it in the oven to make sure that we get that nice bit of toasting or browning initially, but then you might want to finish it in a dehydrator to make sure that it gets to the middle of the croutons if they're quite fat. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, but you can probably see or maybe feel what I mean already by the idea that the seeds are going to start to grab the liquid. It's thickening up on me already. So we just want to make that fairly even so that the baking time is consistent. So just muck around a little bit to get that fairly even. You'll notice it should be quite airy and fluffy as a mixture already. Okay. So I'm just going to flatten that out. This might actually be easier, this step, with the back of a spoon instead of a spatula here, just because I'm not getting as much control. So fairly even. And then we're going to put this in the oven for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, okay? And at that point you can take it out and it should be firm enough that you can cut your crouton shapes out of that. Okay, so we'll pop that into the oven just as is. And I'm going to set that for about 35 minutes. There we go. And then, like I said, so once that comes out of the oven at the 35-minute mark, you're going to cut your little pieces of croutons both ways, kind of score it into the mixture, and then put it back in the oven, but lower the temperature. And depending on your oven, some ovens hold a lot more moisture than others. So if that's the case, and you're noticing that hang on, I'm going to show you one more thing. If you're noticing that your oven is not drying them out and they're just taking forever, then what I would recommend you do is just prop the oven open ever so slightly. Ideally, if you've got, say, like a silicon, like a silicon piece or something like that, it's heat safe, I would just kind of prop it open a little bit. And that just lets the moisture come out of the oven, so it acts more like a dehydrator than an oven. Okay. Otherwise, you could pop it in the dehydrator on whatever temperature you want it and just let it be finished until it's bone dry. Okay, so then the old quintessential classic. Here's one I prepared earlier. So once the croutons come out, then I'll take some out and I'll show you here. Okay, so I've just cut them up into little squares and broken them apart and then put them into a jar so that now they're ready to go on any salad that you want in the pantry. Like I said, they're ready to grab for a quick snack, kind of like you'd have crackers and cheese, but maybe you're having a bit of dip with it or some other veggies and stuff too. And then, they're just ready. They're there. You can make a big batch in no time. You can make a double batch just as easily as the single batch. All right, and talk about extra nutrition. You don't have to worry about finding gluten-free croutons that chances are they're full of other additives and other things you don't want in your body anyways. So here we have the whole food croutons, and you can adjust the spices any way you like. So just because I called for those types of spices, you can put in to your heart's content and play around with what kind of flavoring you would like in your croutons. Okay, so that's roughly what it's going to look like when they're finished being cooked and fully dried out. The thing that I want to point out here, and maybe I'll get you to zoom in on this one, is you really want them to be dry. So if there's any form of bending, I can't demonstrate it here because this is fully dry, but if there's any form of give that it has before it snaps, then that's not fully dry. And so we need to make sure that it's fully dry. Otherwise, as they sit in the jar in the pantry, there's moisture in there that's going to grow stuff that we don't want. So nice and crisp, nice and dry. And if you happen to open the jar and realize it's gotten a bit stale, you can even pop them back into the oven to re-dry them, provided it doesn't smell bad. Okay, so there's your quick and easy croutons, which now we have on hand for any salad you want. And in this case tonight, I'm going to show you the bruschetta salad. So for me, I didn't actually address that in the beginning of this video, but hello Caramel, hello Chris, welcome. I didn't address this at the beginning of the video, but this is the first of a 4-part series that I'm going to do for this Cook With Me over the next 4 weeks to get you ready for your Christmas dinner. This is the first recipe that I'd like to show you that I'm proposing you could possibly make for your Christmas dinner. The reason being is that the next 4 recipes that I'm going to show you, including tonight, are ones that can be prepared in advance so that you don't have to be in the kitchen on Christmas Day or whenever you decide you're going to have your Christmas meal or holiday festive meal. You don't have to be in the kitchen on that day slaving away. Everything can be done. All you have to do is serve it on the day or maybe warm something up. So this is the first of a very exciting, I think, 4-part series preparing you for that. So the bruschetta salad. Now, the inspiration for this recipe came from the fact that I love bruschetta or bruschetta. I can't really say it correctly. I'm going to say bruschetta. Hopefully that's okay. But my problem is that being a celiac now, I haven't had traditional bruschetta in ages. And I think the one time that I did order it at a restaurant, the version of the gluten-free kind of crouton-y bread thing it came on wasn't too exciting. So I'm just redesigning it. I wanted to make it into salad form. I've given you the little crispy, crunchy bit. You can add as many as you want onto the salad. And now I want to show you how to make some interesting sort of different flavors within the bruschetta salad. All right, so let's get out all your fresh things. We're going to need lots of tomatoes, and ideally, you are getting the best quality tomatoes you can possibly find. Now, these are organic. They're not extremely ripe at this point, but they're good. Okay, the absolute best ones you could find, you'd probably find at a farmer's market or from someone that you know, or best yet, even if you can grow them yourself. We want those tomatoes that don't look like the store-bought ones. We want the heirloom tomatoes that still have like the ridges through them, the grooves through them. Because the reason why those are not store tomatoes, the varieties that you see commonly in the store, is because they're so delicate and juicy and delicious and amazing that they don't transport well, and they can't be necessarily false ripened controlled as we have it in our conventional food supply system. So if you can go to the farmer's market and go directly to the farmer, you'll have a much better chance of getting the most amazing tomatoes you've ever tasted in your entire life, which will make a humongous difference for this salad, just saying. All right, so if you've got yourself some cherry tomatoes. Now, the biggest thing that I want to show you when it comes to this salad is the idea that how you cut something counts. As in, if we were to just put these tomatoes whole into our salad, it's going to make it very challenging to eat. Even if we just cut this big cherry tomato in half and we threw that in the salad as it is, can you imagine biting into a forkful of salad with something that big and chunky on the spoon? So when you get that in your mouth, that's all you're going to taste momentarily. Well, the rest is going to be lost. And you can do this as your own experiment at home. So you can actually try, I'd recommend starting with a carrot. Cut yourself up a carrot in fairly big chunky pieces and have a taste on that. Like give it a good chew, have a feel, how does it feel in the mouth, what's the sweetness level? And then grate some carrot and eat a little handful of grated carrot and feel what the difference is in your mouth. And I promise you, you will be surprised at how different it is. Okay, so that concept is the idea that how you cut something definitely affects a person's, especially their first initial reaction when they bite into your beautiful Christmas bruschetta salad. You can make it any time of the year though. So it definitely makes a difference is my point here. And these cherry tomatoes are quite large, so I'm even tempted to cut them again. For the sake of tonight, I won't, but I would prefer to have these in eighths as opposed to quarters, okay? Simply for the sake of taste. So that would be my preferred size. This is maybe what I'm gonna leave it at just because I have very forgiving eaters in this house. Okay, so ideally we wanna take that sort of down to the smaller piece size for those guys. And then for these ones, a little bit easier. Oh, and by the way, you can eat that little stemmy bit, okay? So you don't have to take it out, especially if we cut it down smaller. People won't even realize it's there. It's all good. Now, traditionally in a bruschetta, they're going to be recommending that you get rid of all the juice inside this tomato so that you don't make your bread or your croutons soggy. But the benefit of having this as a salad is that we don't have to worry about that, okay? Because it's going to act as our dressing. I don't know if you've noticed, but we're not going to put a sort of a specific type of dressing on this. I'm just going to be using a little bit of the pomegranate molasses instead as the dressing. And I'm going to let the vegetables do the rest of the work. All right, so that's just one little tip and trick. This is also a great recipe to serve for anyone that's going low oil, low fat in their diet. This is a great, flavorful, amazing recipe for that. Okay, and those of you that have been watching maybe a couple of these videos already may have noticed that I'm using this knife instead of my normal baby. Generally, I find with tomatoes, I like using a serrated knife. It just gives me a little bit more fine control, immediate cutting, I guess. And for most people, especially if your knife is not super sharp, that is going to make a noticeable difference in your enjoyment of the food preparation. All right, so how's everyone going? Give me a little shout out. Let me know where you're up to, or if you've ever had a bruschetta salad before. And those of you that are avoiding gluten, when was the last time you had bruschetta? So it's a little bit of a different take. We're going to be adding definitely some non-conventional ingredients because I want to make it fill out and go further as a salad. Okay, so now, next little tip. Even if you're not serving it in this bowl, give yourself more room to work. So in this case, this is not even one of my bigger bowls, but it's bigger than what I'm going to serve it in. So this is going to allow me to toss the salad before I serve it, so that we don't have as much mess or mess around the sides of the bowl as we mix it all up. Okay, so a bigger bowl than what you actually need for mixing. Okay, I could stay in order here of your recipe if you're following that, but I'm going to go straight to the onion just because it was next in line in my basket. And again here, this is a very big emphasis on how you cut it makes a significant difference. Okay, so especially when it comes to something as pungent and as powerful and as flavorful as onion, we really want to make sure we're intentional in our choice of size of the onion. Okay, I would recommend with red onion you go as thin as you can get it. Okay, because then once we've got our rounds, then we can choose how big we cut it from that point. Okay, once we're down that far, we can go this way. All right. So let's give this some slightly smaller pieces. So I'm just going to chop through this a little bit roughly, just till I get down to the right size piece. Keeping in mind, we don't want to just have this overpower the rest of our bite. So personally, I like it quite fine. Not minced, but quite fine. So come have a look at that size. Okay, so they're all different a little bit, but we don't have anything crazy big. So I'm going to call that good. Okay, so question, or thanks, Chris. You've never had a salad before. Well, I'm excited to hear how you feel. This onion's going to make me cry. Oh, that's why I did the onions last. Forgive me while I clear the space where all the acid is. All right. I'm just going to rinse that board as well. Otherwise, you guys are going to have me crying on camera. All right. Is everyone working with nice big cutting boards yet? I don't know if you've noticed, but it makes a big difference, doesn't it? It just means you don't have to worry about spilling stuff over the edges, and oh, just love my big cutting board. Okay, so sorry, there's another question. I made bruschetta with vinegar, basil, and olive oil. Yes. Okay, interesting. So vinegar, basil, and olive oil. And then Lara, what other ingredients did you have as the base? Was it just the tomatoes, the capsicum, and what else? I know everyone makes theirs different. Tomato, capsicum, and onion, or what else did you have with that? I'm curious. Okay, and we're going to now get into the capsicum. Now this is kind of a lovely Christmassy capsicum. It's red and green in one. So we don't even have to worry about doing two. It's got a couple babies in it. So let's take out all the seeds and a little bit of the white part if we can. Okay. Those seeds are apparently not very good for our intestines. So we're going to get them out. All right, into the scrap bin. And, oh, Chris, if you missed the ingredients, yes, good question. Okay, so all of these recipes, if you haven't already subscribed to the cookwithme.live website, all of these recipes get sent out to you on the Friday before we cook them on the Wednesday. So if you are missing it, it's not necessarily posted somewhere at the moment. If you've missed what I'm doing here, we need to get you the recipe, and hopefully you can watch the replay then on Cook With Me Live. And there are other options on there too. So we'll get back to you as soon as this is done. Hello, Shirley. Welcome. You're on. Awesome. Okay, so same goes here, guys, with the capsicum. So the size in this case does count, does matter. If you love capsicum, you can go slightly bigger. If it's not, so much of your absolute favorite ingredient, we're going to cut them smaller. Very simple. Okay, this is, I guess, my preferred way to cut capsicum. There are many different ways. I was even shown, I guess, a very interesting way to cut a capsicum like a rolling barrel. But anyways, we're going to keep this nice and simple. So just thin pieces like this all the way through. And the reason why I do it on this side is A, it's a bit safer, and B, it's easier to cut through this side of the capsicum than through the skin. So I'm going to do that way. Okay. And then again in this direction. So we'll pile them up. The other thing you could be using here is a mandolin. Okay, and I normally would do this mandolin. The only reason why you might not do a mandolin is, for example, and this is being really picky, you get really identical shapes when you use a mandolin. So in some ways, it doesn't necessarily look as fancy with the salad when you serve it. So if I was serving this for guests, I would actually chop it by hand, just because it's a slightly different look and feel. And again, that's being extremely pedantic and picky, so I'm not saying you have to do that. I just really love the look of a hand-cut salad, okay? Provided you can get the sizes right, get the shapes right. I just prefer the look. So it's generally only when I'm cooking for myself at home that I go for the quick, speedy option, which is the mandolin. Just pump it out. Okay. All right. So there's our very Christmassy capsicum. I didn't even do that on purpose, I promise, but it's pretty cool. And maybe on that note, did everyone know that a red capsicum is just a green capsicum that's been left on the plant longer? So yeah, a little tidbit, which is why that one was halfway between. Okay, there's our capsicum. Let's not forget the zucchini. And some of you might be going, what, zucchini, bruschetta? Nah. Don't forget this is a salad, and don't forget the #1 motto is always more variety in your diet, especially if we can get more variety that's raw into your diet. Okay, so when it comes to the zucchini, same concept. How much do you love it? The more you love it, the bigger you cut it. So if it's not your favorite thing, and especially in this salad, I'd probably recommend we go a bit thinner, is we're going to start with lengthwise along the zucchini, just getting ourselves some slices, okay? And then we're going to lay that flat, and we're going to do that again, so thin slices. Oh, bit slippery. And then we're going to stack it and chop it. And this is why it's nice having a big knife, okay? Because then you can take advantage of this action where the tip of the knife stays down and you're just rocking the base of the knife over the stack, making sure we don't have any big outliers. Okay, there's our zucchini. I'm not going to do the both of the zucchini just because I didn't quite put as much tomato in. Okay, so there's that one. Now, a couple other little ingredients before we finish this off, but as you can see, it's going to be a fairly quick salad, nothing too complicated. And the simpler the salad, sometimes the more amazing, provided you get amazing ingredients, okay? Things need to become complicated as far as the number of, of distracting flavors and features that people put into a salad if they're masking sort of nothing too special in the quality of the produce. Okay, and that's one thing to pick up on in restaurants, is that often restaurants, they don't have a chance to go out and source it themselves. They're just ordering, and whatever they get, they get. So in that case, that's why they often need to add more sugar, more salt, more oil, more strong flavors to mask the fact that the vegetables don't actually have a lot of flavor themselves. Okay, so when it comes to basil, I wish you could have smell-o-vision right now. I know basil's maybe a little bit hard to find this time of year. I've just been very lucky that my garden is still producing it. So this is basil that I picked about 35 minutes ago. And it is still so fragrant and so amazing. Oh my gosh, I just feel so lucky. I wish you guys could smell this, but let me know if you've got your own garden basil that you're using too. That would be wonderful. And look, if basil's not your thing, so what? Let's change it up. Let's use a different herb. What would you prefer on your bruschetta salad? It doesn't have to be traditional just because that says it does. Okay. You could be using fresh oregano. Maybe you love marjoram because it's a bit more mild than oregano. Yes, so entirely up to you how you want to customize that. Now, big thing I want to point out here. Have you ever noticed, maybe in a salad that's a day old, that a leafy green turns to have like on its cut edge, the cut edge goes discolored, like a brown or a black color, okay? What that's from is the reaction with stainless steel. So if you are going to be cutting this and preparing this the day before serving it, and you don't have a ceramic knife, okay, then I would recommend breaking it apart. So it does take a little bit longer, but to tear it instead of using a knife on it, because tomorrow, if you use a stainless steel knife, it will have those brown slash kind of blackish edges, which some people may not even notice, okay? But just another little fine detail. The reason that's exactly something that you can pick up on Cook With Me that I couldn't really detail in writing in the instructions, which is some of the advantage of doing that, okay? Plus, again, coming back to aesthetics, I think it just looks prettier. I think it looks like there hasn't been such a mechanical process doing this when you have the rough, sort of rough hewn edges of a torn basil as opposed to a cut basil. So you could get the kids onto this, just get them in here and just tell them to just tear it apart, tear it to shreds. Not often you get to tell them to do that. Okay, so that's our fresh basil. And if you can, like I said, don't skip the fresh herbs, especially because this salad is not dressed. We just want that life and that amazing flavor to come from the fresh herbs. Okay, so I promise I'll stop there really soon. I just love basil. It smells so good. All right, and then next up we can do some olives. Okay, so again, probably not super traditional in an original bruschetta, but I'm going to use whatever olives I like. How about that? I love these big green ones, especially because they're already pitted. It's kind of like a bigger bang for my buck. Okay, so I'm going to use some of those. How many more can I get? Don't go short on the olives either. That's another great thing. Okay, and as your skills improve, see if you can cut 2 olives at once. Come check this out. So we're just going to hold them together, and we're just going to slice 2 at once. A little bit of efficiency gain. It means you're going to save half the amount of time. Okay, so just some nice slices. And if olives are not your super favorite thing, but you're still including them, again, just chop them up further than this. I'm going to leave them that size because I love, love, love olives. There we go. Now the capers, also not a traditional ingredient, just brings that extra little bit of flavor that I'm really after. So I'm going to put those in too. We're going to need about 1 to 2 tablespoons depending on how much you love them. Now ideally, and I know I didn't specify this in the recipe, ideally you're finding the small tiny capers as opposed to the humongo huge ones. But if you can't do that, then we'll just use what you've got. Steph, your basil is doing okay, but it's in a greenhouse. Okay, I have some growing on the kitchen windowsill in a cup of water. Awesome, that is so good to hear. And any little step, do you find, Steph, that any little step that you take in that direction makes the next one easier? So as soon as you've shown yourself that you can grow basil, whether it's in a greenhouse or in your garden or on your windowsill, then all of a sudden your mind is open to going, maybe I can make my own sprouts. Oh, that was really good. Maybe I can do this. Okay, and everything just goes from there. So congratulations, Steph, on taking that step. All right, so about 1 to 2 tablespoons of capers. And ideally, we don't want any of the juice that they're coming with, okay? So I'm gonna just simplify this a little bit. So capers, these are really big though. I'd rather the smaller ones. And I don't want the juice, so I'm gonna let that drain out through my fingers. Okay. And if you find that capers are a little bit too strong for your palate, and they're really big ones like this, you can just give them a chop so that they're a bit less, less to bite into all at once. Okay, that's heaps. So I don't want any of that extra vinegar. You could even give them a bit of a rinse. They're going to be quite strong. And I'm going to chop them up because those are really big. Okay. So not a lot, just give them a little once over. If you've never seen how capers grow, you should Google it. It's very cool. They're like amazing mountain climbers, rock-based climbers. All right, so there's our capers. And then, as I said before, we're not going to dress the salad. We're going to use a little bit of this pomegranate molasses, okay? And I know it's a bit of a specialty ingredient, so this was kind of my special Christmas touch on this salad, something that you're not maybe doing daily. However, other alternatives for this would definitely be your favorite balsamic glaze. And nowadays there are some fairly good quality ingredient balsamic glazes that you can find. They're more the artisan ones. Particularly in our local area, we have an amazing brand called Lyra, which is like a home family business where they make their own balsamic glazes, and they use, I believe, real good quality flavors to flavor that up. So you can go in and do a little tasters at the farmer's market and choose. You might find a lemongrass balsamic that you want to use. You might find a pomegranate balsamic glaze, something like that. But it really does benefit from having that slightly sweeter flavor over top of this salad. Okay, so I'm going to toss that salad now. We're nearly ready to serve. Just give it a good little mix. And then if you aren't serving it straight away, I would save the drizzle of either the balsamic or the pomegranate molasses for when you serve it. It's just going to be that nice touch on the end. Okay. And if this is not enough of a meal for you, I find this is a lovely summer filling meal for me. You could serve it on a bed of lettuce. So get some really nice delicate lettuce like spinach or butter crunch leaves, even sorrel. If you can get that lovely lemony sorrel, serve it on a bed of that. You could be adding in a little bit of gluten-free pasta to that to bulk it out as a meal. Obviously, those that are eating the meat and the dairy, you could be having that alongside with it, or maybe a boiled egg. But honestly, it is full of flavor and nutrition, plus we're going to be adding the croutons to it. So it is a very filling, delicious meal that you can have on its own. Okay, so let's plate up. How's everyone going so far? Everyone's all good? Maybe scrambling to get your last bit of veggies cut up? All right. So all I like to do here is fill this bowl with some beautiful salad. Let's give it a good drizzle of the pomegranate molasses. And again, totally up to your taste buds. Just have a taste of it first if you're not sure what it tastes like, and then you know roughly how much to use. But for me, it's this beautiful balance between kind of a nice, not even sour, it's just, I guess, that nice pomegranate flavor with a little bit of sweet. And then, to your heart's content, with the croutons. I normally like to sneak in a few extras after we get the pretty bit over with. There we go. So this could potentially be part one of your Christmas dinner and or any other festive or holiday occasion you do, and or an everyday one. So not all the recipes that we're making in this Christmas series are necessarily going to be everyday recipes, but why not? Okay, I've already had this approved by a few people that made it because they were so excited they made it in advance, but I would love to see your photos. I'd love to hear your experiences. Maybe let me know what you wanted to tweak or change according to the ingredients you had. And otherwise, thank you so much for coming to cook with me. When it comes to your croutons in the oven, like I said before, they just need to finish drying out completely. So you can easily come back to them, finish cutting them at the 35-minute mark, and then put them back in the oven to finish drying out until you can let them cool and store them in your pantry for any time that you need them. So as far as our seed bread croutons and our bruschetta salad goes, there we have it. I'm going to get ready to eat and have dinner, and we'll see you guys next time on Cook With Me Live. Thank you.